Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. I hope you guys are doing well. So the situation in Syria, it really is deteriorating. Here we see there was reports coming out from multiple places. Right here, this is out of Balaz, and showing 32 Turkish soldiers killed in Russian airstrikes in northern Syria. Emergency meeting taking place at Erdogan's office. If you guys have been following this is, you can either look at it as it's starting to spiral out of control or it's ratcheting up. Any way we look at it, there's getting to be more and more open, outright conflict between Russia and Turkey. And it's been very interesting to follow this. Again, Turkey is a part of NATO. Technically, yeah, well, it is. It's a part of NATO, even though they bought some S-400s from Russia, which really ticked off the Trump administration, understandably. And they have swung around now, now that they have this conflict that's been building here, to looking for weaponry from the U.S. again, as we see here. More talking about this strike, information about the killing of more than 30 Turkish soldiers from an airstrike by Russian warplanes on their location. And this is in the vicinity of Sarakeb in the Idlib countryside of northern Syria. Now, Turkey's taken it upon themselves to go into northern Syria uninvited. And again, there's multiple things going on here. Part of it is the Kurdish people. As you know, the Kurds were, and what comes to my mind was being used by the U.S. To fight against ISIS, and the like, and also kind of not really being protected, unfortunately, and not necessarily thanked for their help in that battle. And the Kurds want their own homeland. They want a Kurdistan, and Turkey does not want that. And so part of this is all about that and what's going on here. And so they find themselves, Turkey and Russia, at odds here. And it's getting to be more and more of an outright just conflict on a military scale. And instead of using proxies and attacking surrogates, now it's starting to be where they're hitting each other. As you see here again, Russia has conducted airstrikes in Idlib, Syria, killing dozens of Turkish forces. And what will Turkey's response be? And here you see Danny Mackey saying the situation in northwestern Syria just went from dangerous to very, very dangerous quickly. And again, another source saying unconfirmed reports that dozens upon dozens of Turkish soldiers have been killed in a massive Russian airstrike on the Syria-Turkey border just about an hour ago. With everything that we have going on in the world here, we could see that tensions can be running high. And we had talked about before the fact that there's going to be a scramble for resources. And not that this is necessarily a scrambling for resources. We've talked about PNAC, Project for a New American Century, and the fact that, General Wesley Clark came out way back after 9/11, just after 9/11, saying we're going to go into 7 countries. And the only 2 that we haven't gone into, the only one we haven't gone into is Iran, but the only 2 that haven't been controlled is Iran and Syria. And so here we again see that it's a heightened area of concern, and there could be complete war breaking out at any time here. As you see, breaking Turkish soldiers were killed in the Libyan National Army counterattack targeting their headquarters in Libya. So Libya is another place where you have these opposing forces battling it out. The world's in most definitely a dangerous and precarious place right now. And over here you see local Inhate Rehani hospital saying 33 dead among Turkish forces. There's a video here, first unconfirmed video of the strike on Turkish army post in Idlib. As far as NATO goes, part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's statement is the fact that an attack on one NATO country is an attack on all. And so, this is something that has the potential to pull NATO into. And let's hope that's not the case. And you got to wonder what what the leadership of NATO and of some of the NATO countries, such as the U.S., the U.K., Germany, France, what they would say in regards to this. If it does become an all-out war with Turkey and Russia openly fighting each other, would NATO intervene on Turkey's behalf? Which, if they actually did live up to the treaty, then they would technically have to. But at the same time, Turkey has acted like a wild card, playing both sides of the fence. So would they? And this begs the question, should Turkey even be a part of NATO anymore? And many people feel like NATO itself is kind of disintegrating. Syrian air defenses down Turkish drone that targeted government positions in countries north. And Russia and Turkey are currently holding a series of talks on the situation in Idlib, which has exacerbated in early February as militants intensified attacks against the Syrian government's positions. See, the Syrian government has been reclaiming a lot of what was lost, and then Turkey went in there to basically stop that. And then Russia now is starting to stop Turkey's and counterattack or attack in Syrian territory. Russia is starting to step in to reassert their support for the Assad regime. So it's a mess. This is a mess of what we have going on here. And this is from South Front. Erdogan forces recapture Narab, but lost another dozen of villages to the Syrian army. And the fall of Sarakib. Syrian army retreats under Turkish strikes in eastern Idlib. And thus then we get the air support from Russia coming in. So we definitely have to watch this. Turkish specialists are using anti-aircraft missiles against Russian and Syrian warplanes, Russian state TV is saying. And there's a video here, it's pretty brutal, showing Russia special forces crushing militants in Syria. Again, the technology makes it so there is no fair fight here. It's just a matter of them not even seeing what's coming. So there's video here for those that have the stomach. And then we see President Erdogan's options narrow as Russia presses Syrian crisis to Turkey's doorstep. So with nearly 1 million displaced, and this is out of Reuters, displaced Syrians massing near the Turkish border, these poor people, that's the bottom line, is the people of Syria are just getting pushed one way and then the other, one way and the other. They've suffered through so much, and of course they're in camps now that we have this CV outbreak going on, and the camps would be places where the virus could spread rampantly. And you have 1 million displaced Syrians massing near the Turkish border, to just get out of the way of the fighting going on. In the face of Syrian government military offensive, President Erdogan's options are narrowing. He feels blindsided by Russia's push into Syria's Idlib region, and the risk of full-blown conflict is growing, but Turkey's Erdogan remains hopeful a deal with Moscow may offer a way out of the crisis, according to Turkish government officials and other sources. We have talked about his desire to unify the Islamic world under a new caliphate and a revived Ottoman Empire at the same time. Erdogan has repeatedly warned that Turkey, which backs rebels in Syria's northwestern province, would push Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's troops away from territory taken in recent months if they didn't pull back by the end of February. But as Saturday's deadline has drawn closer, the Russian-backed Syrian offensive has continued to gain ground, And the third round of talks between Ankara and Moscow this week were not expected to quickly break the deadlock. Turkish government and Syrian opposition, military officials, diplomats, and analysts said that while full-scale Turkish-backed military operations still a possibility, depending on how hard Russia bargains, Erdogan is more likely at this stage to agree to a deal with Moscow that has him withdraw some of Turkey's military presence in exchange for a role in deciding Syria's future. They added that Erdogan has been taken aback by what Turkey views as Russian President Vladimir Putin's uncompromising stance in the field and in discussions. A Turkish official told Reuters Turkey and Russia can still reach a compromise, but if there's no agreement and attacks on Turkish soldiers continue, the Idlib offensive will begin, referring to a direct Turkish military effort to retake the territory. Erdogan's office did not respond to requests for a comment. He and aides have publicly stated that they want to solve the problem with Russia, but that Turkey's resolve should not be tested and it will not abandon observation posts in Idlib, some of which have been surrounded by Syrian forces. Erdogan's decision will help define one of the worst humanitarian crises that we've seen this century, in which an estimated 900,000 Syrians, about half of whom are children, have been uprooted as they have fled the bombing of their towns and villages in recent months. In December, Moscow and Damascus, reinforced by Iranian-backed fighters, launched the operation into the last big territory in northwest Syria held by opposition forces as they seek an end on Assad's terms. 9 years of bloody proxy war that has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Syrians. So, it's a mess going on right there, and let's not forget that the Project for a New American Century had targeted them back in 1997 as being a country that had to fall into the Western powers' hands. Germany threatens consequences over Libya arms sales. Despite a weapons embargo, some countries are continuing to send weapons to war-torn Libya. And so German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas threatened these countries with consequences, and we'll see what happens there. And just for those that are curious about the military rankings, obviously Russia is ranked second only to the U.S. in military power, largely due to the size of their nuclear arsenal. As when we look at total population, Russia has 142 million, Turkey has 81 million. Turkey has the second largest army in NATO after the U.S. So it's a pretty big military. They're ranked 11th out of 138 nations. Russia, again, ranks second. U.S. first. China third. And when we look at that, again, China's sheer volume that they could throw on the field is, in terms of manpower, would only be matched by India's. And India is ascending in power as we speak. Of course, this whole coronavirus situation throws everything up in the air. And we would hope that cooler heads would prevail. But then again, we understand that there are puppet masters that control everything that we see going on all the time. So, as always, my friends, best to be prepared, best to be stocked up as best you can. As always, prepare for the worst and pray for the best, and use your intentions that we will not see another massive war on this planet, as that's the last thing we need with everything else that's going on right now. Thank you guys so much for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. God bless and namaste.